Hi, this is Craig Severance from the Zero Energy Channel. Come join us as we work to address the challenge of moving toward a world with zero energy from fossil fuels. Well, we are finally getting our metal roofing on, and this is the most challenging part of the job, and one which I would not have chosen to do myself. But if you start a small project like a tiny house, you better know how to do everything yourself, or learn how, because if you even try to get a regular contractor to do a bid, first it's on wheels and they're going to be reticent to do anything that they're not familiar with, plus it is a small job. So we're doing it ourselves. You can see these panels here have a shape where one side of it is a little tongue that comes over. It's a little bit bigger than the other side. The bigger one is this part that overlaps the one next to it. So you have to make sure you get that in the right direction. They say to put the overlaps so that when the wind comes across them, the prevailing wind, it's going to wash over those overlaps, just like similar to how rain would wash over. You always have the bottom first. So here our eastward side is the leeward side of the wind, so we put, and then the other ones are overlapping it. And then as you're going down the highway too, the wind is going to be coming from the front of the trailer as the tongue end. So we're putting it that way, and it's a fairly straightforward process once you understand it. The first thing that goes on, of course, is a Tyvek, but so that's up. You see this drip edge. It's really sharp looking, so that has to come on first, and then you start putting your panels. You first get your pieces of metal roofing and the various strips of metal that come with it. You're going to have a confusing array of parts that you may have never seen before, like was our experience. For instance, these two, what are they? One on the right looks like a gutter, and I said I didn't order any gutters, and then one on the left, actually the drip edge, and one on the right goes on the side. I'll show these on the roof, and it's important to put these on all in the right order, and you'll get it. And you'll find that the people who are really familiar with this don't often know how to explain it to someone who isn't very familiar with it. So we'll try to go through that. Once you get this process down, it's actually fairly straightforward then to put it on once you know what these pieces are and where they go. This piece is the drip edge, and it goes on the edge of the bottom edges of your roof sheathing. And as you can see, the large pieces of metal roofing panels go on top of it, and as a result, this is usually the first piece that you want to look at putting on, are the drip edges along the bottom edges. Here in this corner, you can see there's a corner piece that also has to be underneath the large metal roofing panels. So you'll see that is coming up the corner here in this place where the roof meets the dormer heading upwards, and so that's a really dangerous spot where water could come in. So they give you these corners to put there before you lay down your pieces. What's odd about them is which edge goes up. It was counterintuitive that the longer piece with the bend in it is the one that goes up, and the shorter piece that was flat is the one that is on the bottom. But that's the way it was, and of course when you install that, you can see we had to put an angle on that, and a lot of times you're putting into different places, and you're going to have to cut it to fit it into those places. So that's generally the second piece that goes on. After you have your drip edges on the bottom and your corners on where you need the corners, then you're going to go through the whole process of the larger metal roofing panels, starting on one edge and overlapping them and going to the other. And you can see you'll be wanting to install them with these nice screws. They're the same color as your metal roofing. You want to order those at the same time. While we're here on this same shot, we'll see that here on the edge, the side edge, is what looks like an upside down gutter, and that's the side. And after that is on, you can see that's actually is overlapping what was the end of the metal roofing panel, and you're going to lay that down over top of that and all the way up the edge. Coming back here, so now we've got the drip edge, the corners, the metal roofing panels, the sides, and capping it all off, of course, is the cap. It covers the ridge and covers both sides of the roof, and that huge gap that's usually at the top there, it gets covered. And so basically that's the process, and the angles will be different. You'll have your own details, but drip edge, corners, metal roofing, sides, and ridge cap, and you can keep that in the right order. It's what we ended up doing. Okay, you can see the one to the right side is overlapping the one on its left, and what's that goop underneath? You're supposed to put butyl caulk underneath, and that stuff is really messy, hard to get off. So what we found out, the best way to apply the caulk is put it in the piece that you're going to overlap in that groove before you put the panel up, and it's so sticky it just stays in that groove when it comes down over top of the other one. It was really a pretty easy way to keep from making huge messes. By the way, here at the end, my wife said on the next one, stop putting it way to the end, it looks terrible and it's getting sand in it, because it's a sandy work site. So we don't see this on the other one, but I wanted to show you that there is caulk in there where those seams overlap. You see the screws, we chose to put them 7 inches from the bottom, and then every 2 feet. That's a general guideline, every 2 feet, up to the top one there. And you might wonder how I managed to reach everything. And that's the part where we can't show you because there was only 2 of us and no third person to run the camera. My wife had to, besides, if I actually showed you, somebody would probably sue me for doing the same thing and getting hurt. Do not try that at home. My wife was standing on the bottom of the extension ladder, and I extended it all the way to the top, and I had to climb up on some of those top rungs to reach. We had to put it almost at a 45-degree angle, but you can't walk on these that Tyvek, and and of course we use this rope and a harness to keep me safe. I wasn't climbing, I wasn't scaling the roof like you might imagine using the harness, because your feet are just gonna slip away. So we used the ladder. Very unsafe, do not try that, but that's how we ended up reaching all the way to the top screw without actually trying to scale the roof with that rope, which I think would have been even more dangerous. So definitely an advantage if you can doing a tiny house to build them in some sort of indoor environment where you could have lots of supports and everything else. So this is going on. Now we're going to have to come here and install the outside plywood for the sheathing on this corner wall that I built. So since we're having to apply it using this scaling the roof technique, waited till now. We're going to put the plywood, measure and cut the triangular plywood piece, put that on there, and then we'll be able to put the L-shaped flashing, which is also blue metal roofing, in that corner, and then put the metal panel up against that. So that'll be that complete plane. The roofer said that we will put then the end gables on. There are side pieces that fit on the ends here. They almost look like gutters. But they go on the ends here on the side of the roof. And then the final piece will be the cap. So we're working on this and getting it done because we have to have a roof. And it's actually coming out fairly well. Of course, when you're working up high like this, you want to do as little as possible up there. So our roofer gave us really good advice. Since you know where these holes are going to be, like for us 7, 31, 55, and 78, pre-drill the holes while the panels are on the ground. Makes it much slicker. You can generally do the bottom 2 rows of screws too without having to do extreme measures, because you can reach them from the edge with a regular ladder. So that's what we did to keep off the roof the most that we possibly could, and then we would use more extreme measures to reach the top 2 rows of screws. The next step will be doing the triangular area, the flashing, and then cutting the final piece. It only looks like it's going to be about 1 foot wide. Cutting metal is never going to be an easy thing, but you're going to have to cut these pieces to fit when you get to a place like this. Okay, here's a little video of what you may need to get this metal roofing done. A helper, and here's my son Eric, and it turned out the jigsaw with simple metal cutting blade actually worked as a pretty low stress way of getting this done. Actually cuts the metal, which I wasn't sure if it would, but it does. It's you have to have it on a solid surface. We laid it out on this picnic table here, because otherwise it just shakes all over the place when you start cutting it. Of course, if you're going to be cutting metal, you better be wearing eye protection and ear protection. Both of you need hearing protection, because this really screams. It looks like it's going to fit. But you can cut it with just a jigsaw, a helper, ear protection, and a dog. The dog, of course, here's Corin, is to get help and tell the fire department exactly what's going on, just like Lassie did anytime anything went wrong if you fall off the roof. So this is our corner that we put up there, with the corner flashing first up against the wall, and then we had to cut a piece to go in there. The last piece we cut with a jigsaw and metal cutting blade, but it's actually easier to control. But the jigsaw started ejecting the metal cutting blade every minute and just dropping out, so I switched to the Sawzall with its metal cutting blade, which is much rougher and harder to control, but no question it's not going to keep having the blade fall out. So we actually cut this piece with the Sawzall metal cutting blade and cut it to size and put it up in there. Okay, here we found the solution that actually will cut the metal pretty straightly. It's really good. This will cut it, but you have to be careful here. You go sideways with that, goodbye the surface of the metal. So this cuts it really nicely. The grinder with the metal cutting blade. So we are doing it this way for this cut and for future cuts. The process for the dormer roof was essentially the same as for the main roof, with the glaring exception, of course, of this wood stove chimney sitting in one of the panels. which is beyond the scope of this video, but your wood stove supplier will give you the right flashing, including this cone-shaped piece that surrounds the chimney that's poking through the roof. But the point here is that if you're going to have a wood stove chimney, you've got to get it in as part of the roofing process. We haven't put the wood stove inside or this interior stovepipe, but this part had to go in as part of the roof. And the rest of the dormer roof from there over was essentially the same process. Okay, one of the problems that I encountered at the very end of the project of the roofing was that at the peak, after you've installed these side borders on the edges of the roof, the way you're supposed to, you end up with this nasty little open space at the top, which my roofer had not warned me about and hadn't provided any instructions for. Luckily, though, I did find a description of the solution to this exact problem in the Tiny House Design and Construction Guide, which is a book I highly recommend by Dan, Louche. He describes how you can take some of your roofing cap and make some pieces that will close that gap. Well, it's very possible my roofer knew about this and just neglected to tell me, because I did end up having a couple of extra feet of roof cap here beyond what was necessary for the ridge, and so I'm going to be using this material. I'm cutting it in half to end up with two different caps. Of course, this is the very first time I've attempted this, and I'm going to be stumbling through this, trying to get this right. The first thing it says is to cut the end. It doesn't say how many inches. It looks like about 3 inches, so I've marked this to cut the middle, a line down the middle, just in about 3 inches. So we'll do that. So here where I'm actually using the edge of the square here, and that seems to be working pretty well to help me bend that in a straight way. To the other side here. They're going to end up overlapping, of course, which is what we want in reality. Like this. And then what Dan suggests then is riveting these together here, which I don't have that tool. The little detail that Dan adds is to cut off these sharp tips and make them essentially horizontal. You'll have to do the angle that's appropriate for your roof to make that a horizontal. And for us, it's just a 45 here. And come up the same distance from the tip and cut. And so it's just another cosmetic detail. And also, I'm going to mention here right now, since you see me scratching the roof, your final friend on this is going to be your touch-up paint. Buy it in exactly your same roof color. If you're going to do this yourself for the very first time, you're going to scratch a lot of places on your roof. Touch-up paint is going to be your savior at the end, and that's going to be the final step we're going to do after we install these caps, is go around all the places we scratch things and touch it up. Solve the problem of the lack of riveter by using these self-tapping screws. They can then be painted the same blue color as the roofing screws. These are basically our roofing screws. They have a rubber washer, just not blue yet. Can't attach to the side of the building because it's several inches in from here. So, but these should work. That should work just fine at the top piece of the roof. Okay, so this will work, and we can just paint these blue, and I won't need to have the rivets. Make that too fancy of a project. So I'll paint these blue, and we'll run up to the peak and attach this. And we're getting ready to install it here at the peak. And you may notice something that you didn't notice earlier in the roofing video, because this is now 7 months later. I bought scaffolding. We needed scaffolding to put our big windows in the dormers anyway. So I found out that we could get some used scaffolding ends and some other new pieces for a total of less than about $400. And so rather than doing the crazy dangerous things that we did earlier with the roofing, just know that at some point in the project you're going to need scaffolding, so just go ahead and buy it. Okay, so it fits nicely up here. It covers the gap, and I have to get up top of it to screw that on. And then after it's screwed on, we will just go ahead and paint it there, and we'll have it. And then we slap that up there, and we have that gap closed. So this was the last, that and the little touch-up paint was the last of our roofing, and we have our full roof done in all respects. So here's a shot of our completed roof doing its job on what has been a rainy day here. And this was totally a do-it-yourself project. And people have never done this before. And as you saw, we had a lot of problems figuring this out, but we got it done. And our roof for our tiny house is completed.
Hello, my name is Eric. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up down below. Also, if you want to subscribe, that's good too. Join us on the Zero Energy channel.